Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Islam in Life with me, Raza Ghazim. A few people are killed in Paris by people who happen to be Muslims, and the entire French establishment puts all Muslims under suspicion, and the religion of Islam is targeted. But targeting religion through the racist lens, the French are continuing a long-standing tradition of intolerance towards religion, towards generally others, and in this case towards Muslims. Why did the French not target all white people for the atrocities committed by white people, home and abroad? And why is the whiteness of the whites not scrutinized?
French authorities have been closing mosques all over the country following the Paris attacks, claiming these mosques are illegal and grooming extremism. French Interior Minister Bernard Cazeneuve said in the wake of the 2nd of December 2015 raid that jihadist material had been found in the mosque and at related properties in the city. 9 people were placed under house arrest and 22 banned from leaving the country in the wake of the operation. Between 100 and 160 mosques are expected to face the axe. Most of these mosques are funded by the Saudi and Qatar regimes and preach the hardline Wahhabi Islam. The West has used the whip of sectarianism to divide Muslims all the time, and Muslims have refused to rise to the bait this time, instead asking French authorities to scrutinize themselves first.
Major of the Nation of Islam, the Ummah of Islam, they agree that these are extremist sects of Islam. And to keep harmony within the community and to make sure people know what is real, authentic Islam and not Oriental Islam, we need to eradicate these mosques and such facilities which facilitate the way for those who are extremists.
It's like, an excuse to do something, just to show that, okay, we're active in combating Daesh, because since it's their own fabrication, it's just a way to show the people that we're doing something about it when there's anyway no threat in the first place.
We're honored to be joined by our esteemed guest, Professor Tariq Ramadan, to discuss all of these issues. Welcome to the program, Professor.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. The fact that a few commit a crime, and as a result, the entire French establishment targets all Muslims to be scrutinized, some would argue that this is very much a racist paradigm that is being enacted. What would you say?
I think we have to be cautious because first, it's not all the French establishment, what is done by the government and a segment within the government. When it comes, for example, to the state of emergency, just after what happened in November last year, it's a decision, and within the establishment you have people saying, no, we have to stop this, and all what was done under this state of, or in the name of this state of emergency, with people being arrested and house arrest and the excesses of all these policies that we have in France have been criticized from within. So I would prefer for us not to generalize, to essentialize what France is, because there are contradictory forces within. Now, the establishment and what is coming from the policies that we had is, they are not saying this. They are not saying it's Islam. They are saying we are targeting the radicalized and we are targeting the violent extremists. The problem that it's there is all the discussion that we have about Islam are so tainted in France that it has an impact. So you end up saying you speak about the violent extremists, but in fact you speak about Islam as being a problem. So this is where they are nurturing a sense of racism against Muslims, which is the other name of Islamophobia. But the Prime Minister, for example, doesn't even want to use the term Islamophobia. It doesn't exist. It was promoted, or he said once that this term was created by Islamists and mainly people who are influenced by Iran, just to create a new category. Just look, it's used by all the international institutions that there is something called Islamophobia, which is a new type of racism. So I would say that yes, this obsession with security and essentializing the whole thing is a problem.
let me pick up. There are a number of things that you've said that I want to come back on.
Yeah.
One of the points that you said that, for example, he's rejected the notion of Islamophobia, so hatred against Muslims, anti-Muslim hatred. Now, if he had said that in the sense, I think you know where I'm going, in terms of anti-Semitism, that nothing like that exists, what would the reaction have been to that?
No, it is impossible. It would have been impossible to say this. Anti-Semitism is deeply connected to the European history, so it's something that is there. The problem is to acknowledge, is there something that we can call today a new type of racism against Muslims? He's very cautious. Say yes, there are things, and the rates is just multiplying by 3. The number of acts against Muslims this year compared to last year. So he cannot but acknowledge this. But it's the term itself. He doesn't want something which is, oh, no, we are not targeting Muslims. Of course, yes, Muslims are sometimes victims, but he doesn't want to have a concept, a notion that is saying, look, this is what is happening. So we don't want a kind of hierarchy between, races, but you have to acknowledge that something wrong is happening in this country. So he tried to avoid this, and he's not the only one. And this is the problem. He is from the left-hand side of the political spectrum, but you have it with the right, the traditional right, with the Republicans, as they call themselves now, or the far-right party. So in fact, there is something now which is structurally within the political discourse in France, which is problematic, which is in fact this emphasis on we have a problem with Islam, and Islam is a problem, and Islam is not even perceived as a French religion. It's not a religion in the French mindset. It's alien, it's the other. And you said this is something which is very, very old problem that we have, starting with colonialism, and up to now we have exactly the same mindset.
Now, within that, when the person actually rejects that the problem actually exists, that he is in essence the fountainhead of that problem, and he's not recognizing that he's the fountainhead of that problem, and not recognizing the role of the state within the promotion of the anti-Muslim hatred that is there, because these problems don't, or these attacks don't happen in a vacuum. They happen because they have been quietly sanctioned in a sense. No, he wouldn't say it, but they have been, haven't they?
In a way, they are saying that the concept does not exist. There is nothing like Islamophobia. But as you are saying, behind this rejection of the notion, there is a state of denial that there is something wrong coming from the state itself. And when we are saying, what do you want? Do you want Muslims without Islam? Which type of Islam do you want? Which type of Muslims do you want? The so-called moderate, that are the yes people that you want? This is the people that you are talking about? And pushing some of the leaders. And some of the Muslims are following in the footsteps of exactly this frame, expected and imposed sometime by the state. So there is, yes, a problem. There is a problem today in the majority of the French establishment, where we have a state of denial that the problem is their discourse, is their understanding, is that the fact they don't acknowledge the past, that there is a problem, they don't acknowledge the present, and they are still looking at the Muslim presence in the country as, oh, it's coming from the suburbs. This is the other France. It's the other, it's something which is coming from this, perception. It's a geographical isolation, why we have all these problems, and the problems in the suburbs are not socioeconomic problems. They are problems because there are a majority of Muslims. So Islam is creating the problem. This mindset is there, and this is a problem. Is that when they are saying we as French, it's we without them, and them are mainly Muslims.
Now, I want to move on slightly, although there are still some questions there. Perhaps we will have time to come back to them. The issue of Takfirism within the Muslim community, who should address that problem, and how is that issue being fomented in the Muslim community?
I would say, as Muslims, the Muslim scholars, Muslim intellectuals, and ordinary Muslims, they should address this. And it's very, very important to take a stand on this and to be clear. Why? Because if you are not, at the end, you can be instrumentalized by states or instrumentalized by groups, by sectarian groups. So we have to take a position. For example, when I was asked about Daesh and asked about what they are doing, I say, look, all what they are doing is against Islam. These people are instrumentalizing Islam and they are criminals. But I cannot say they are not Muslims because they are saying we are Muslims. So I would say, you are Muslims, but I will combat, I will stand up against what you are doing, because what you are doing is against Islam. But I'm not going to play into the takfiri mode as they are playing, because they consider me, for example, as not being a Muslim, as being outside. So for them, my blood is licit, my blood is halal, they can kill me. I cannot do this, not only because I consider them as Muslims, because this is not the way I have to deal with my religion. Having said that now, we should not let any state, and especially the states in the West that are pushing the Muslims to the point that they want to tell us who we have to consider as Muslims, who we have to consider as bad Muslims, and who do we have to consider as outside Islam. A state couldn't and should not do this. If we are not clear, they are going to play. And then we have the extremist groups that are doing exactly the same. For example, you have people coming from the very Salafi literalists, the Salafi al-Harfiyya, the literalists, that we call them sometimes the Wahhabi and you know, all this tradition. They say, al-Firqatun Najiyya, we are the only saved group, meaning we are all lost, we are all outside. So they are playing with in a way with this categorization, which is very dangerous. We better take a clear stand on that.
Lots of interesting things that are perhaps beyond the scope of this program, but we'll come up with some of these issues. Thank you for that. Please get involved in the discussion through the social media. Here is a sample of what you sent us this week.
This week we asked, is the French regime right in closing selected mosques? Jose from South Africa said, I think that France has lost or dropped the cross of Jesus, their faith and their principles. No one should have the right to close down a holy place of worship to God Almighty. However, if there is a suspicion of a terror threat, whether it's from a mosque, church or temple, then there should be at least a search and investigation by the authorities. Trevor from France said, yes, security takes precedence, and if jihadi material has been found in any place, that place needs to be closed. And Mike from the UK said, I don't think closing mosques is the right approach. I think the authorities need to target a small group of people who use these mosques, if at all, to spread their ideology. All the people who visit the mosque should not be victimized. That's all the comments we have for this week. If you'd like to have your comments featured in the show, be sure to follow us on Facebook or join us on Twitter.
One of the things that has started to happen is this idea of closing down masjids within France, going after the masjids and scrutinizing them, seeing what's going on, and perhaps taking on board some of the things that you've actually said, that the arms of the state are actually starting to be used against other Muslims by Muslims and so on. Where is this going?
No, this is very bad, because the whole atmosphere, the climate in France is all about suspicion and spreading fear. And then you come to the facts, and we understand that there is something wrong in the whole way we are perceiving what is violent extremism. For example, we had in this country here in the UK a very long discussion after 7/7 in 2005 about which word do we have to choose. Radicalisation, is it the right word? And I say, no. In fact, we are going to call them violent extremists. Because radicalisation, for example, by the way, radical is not always bad. If you are radically against poverty, it's good. Radical could be also a sin. But when you say radicalized, means that they are evolving from understanding the rules to being extreme. The great majority, up to 95%, 92-95% of the young people who are, for example, attracted on internet, when they go for it, they have less than 2 months of practicing Islam. So Which type of radicalization are we talking about? No, it's not radicalization. Something which is a fracture, something happening. So when you say radicalization, it's as if, oh, they were trained in mosques, and then they got another understanding, and then they ended up being extreme. So you put the reason or the source into something which is not there. Many of them, they were going to clubs and nightclubs and drugs, and they had nothing to do with Islam. So all of a sudden, something is changing in their life. So we have to be very cautious not to say this. Why am I saying this? Because when you say, okay, look, let us now come and check the numbers and check the figures that you have, the great majority of these people who were involved, for example, were not trained in mosque. They were attracted and caught on internet. They were not connected. So why are you closing mosque? For example, I'm very much against the literalist approach, the Wahhabi approach. I'm not a Salafi literalist. I'm against this. But I want a dialogue. I want to challenge their understanding. I'm coming from a reformist trend of saying we have to take the text seriously, but we have to be open to the world. I don't like your literalism, and I don't like the way you are dealing with the scriptural sources. But I know that the great majority of them are not violent. They can nurture a binary mindset, which is right and wrong. So I understand that this could be dangerous if then you use this and you instrumentalize this by saying you can kill people of other faiths, you can kill the people that we don't consider as Muslims. But I cannot confuse a wrong interpretation with violent extremists, because these people were not trained by them. So I would say that what we had in France by closing mosques and putting, so at the end, if you close mosques, so you are creating the link between Islam and violent extremism. You are creating in the mindset, in the understanding, oh, mosques, and this was not the case, because there is no link in the reality of this young people being involved.
One of the things that's started to happen is that you have the French involvement in the Middle East, and you have this idea of blowback. And then you have this being utilized or used, instrumentalized by the state to actually target local Muslim communities. Is that to censor them? Is that to limit what they can say in terms of resistance and targeting? You know, what's going on there?
Yes, it's even deeper than that, because we have in France what we had in the United States and then even in the UK. Remember when Tony Blair said, what they did in London has nothing to do with what we are doing there. So disconnecting the two. While in France, they were saying exactly the same. You are going to kill people in Syria. Why are you in Syria, by the way? What are you doing in Syria? What are you doing in Africa? What are you doing in the Middle East? What are you protecting, and who are you protecting? Your geostrategic interest, oil, gas, uranium? What are you doing there? And then they say, oh, no, there is no relationship. So we have to condemn what they are doing and not try to find reasons. And the problem that we have is some of the scholars, the ulama, the shuyukh, I saw one of them going to the United Nations saying, let us speak about the solutions and not speak about the reasons. I said, how come? There is no solutions if you don't deal with the reasons. And the reasons is what you are doing in the Middle East, what you are doing there has an impact here. So you better also check your foreign policy. And then don't try to use this by silencing within because in fact, this is exactly what Bush was saying, which is this, if you are not with us, it means that you are with them. So it's with us or against us. I say, no, I can be against your policy and against them at the same time. So this kind of imposing onto us to say, if you criticize our foreign policy and you say there is a link, it means that you are justifying what they are doing. You say, absolutely not. It's the opposite. By not talking about your foreign policy, you put us in a situation where we are dealing with people who are justifying what they are doing, and we cannot respond. I want to respond with argument by saying, I'm against what you are doing, but I'm against what this government, the French government, is doing in the Middle East or in Africa. So yes, it's a way of silencing, critical voices, and the loyalty that we are asked to promote is a blind loyalty to the state to show how good Muslims we are by being silent in front of or before the government's policies.
One of the terms that you used from Bush was with us or against us. Now, in this kind of scenario, the waters get muddied with the Saudi kind of funding of a number of masajid and so on. And, you know, it's being termed as illegal. And yet they're flirting with the Saudis constantly in terms of what they expect from them and what they want them to do in terms of being used for their purposes. Where is that? How is that relationship going to be going? On the one hand, they want the Saudis there. On the other hand, they are saying, actually, this is not quite right in terms of funding the masajid.
I think it's deeper than that. By letting this kind of ideology being there, having mosque and nurturing, it's helping this political discourse of, look, these are the Muslims. And so they are also helping the ideology. And then you come back to the old time of colonialism, and you see how sometimes the colonizers were helping some trends to promote an image. And we are expecting, you Muslims, you have to show that you are modern, that you are open for democracy, open for secular reality, open for pluralism, open for everything. It goes from rejecting the headscarf to promoting homosexuality. So you have to do this. And then you say, yes, but what about you, governments? How are you dealing with this? And how you let them have their mosque and money and promote this kind of very literalist and very ultra-conservative Islam that we are criticizing? It's as if you're asking this from us and nurturing this just because this is useful for your policy. So it's not only a question of money. There is something which is an ideological, useful support for some trends that are conservative and literalist in order to promote this tension between citizens and between the government and some trends.
How do Muslims in France, living in the suburbs, when you've got that money coming in to the masajid, how do you expect them to be able to navigate these nuances that we're talking about on this program? Because on the street, when you see someone being pious or doing the salah and everything else, you think, oh yeah, this is it. You know, he's got something there that I think I need. You know, the spirituality, whatever you want to say, I need to connect.
First, you know, all what we are saying shows how much it's difficult to navigate in this, you know, who is who and who wants what. That's very difficult. But at the same time, I keep on repeating this, and I think it will become, it will be the reality soon. And I said in one of my books, it will be 1 or 2 generations, but it's going to happen. In fact, what you see today with the young generations coming from the suburbs, and by the way, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th generation of Muslims are no longer isolated in the suburbs. Now, in fact, what I'm saying to the French establishment is the social integration worked. So now you have people getting out of the ghetto, the social ghetto, the geographical isolation, and they are more visible everywhere. And this visibility and this way of dealing, it's something that we will need. Now it's clear, as you said, Muslims are on the defensive. And when you come with money coming from the community to build a mosque, you are much less opportunities than if you come with millions of money. They will support this and not you. They trust them because they control. They don't trust their own citizens. So say what's the point? What's wrong? And when you speak about representation of Muslims you go to the Moroccan, Algerian, Tunisian, Turkish embassies and not with us. And you speak about French Islam? What's that? So I think that it's very difficult because you are playing at different levels. And what is happening on the ground is now the reality of Muslims, French Muslims, understanding more and more the political landscape and now being able to navigate a bit better. But it will take time. But you have this awareness within the Muslim community. First, that is going to be difficult. But second, and this is the point I started with, that it's not monolithic. You have lots of political forces in France who are understanding what we are talking about. They see how it works and they are ready now. So it's beyond the Muslim community that you will find allies and people who are ready to deal with it. And for example, you have websites where it's against Islamophobia, and the great majority of the people are not Muslims who are working with this. And I think that this is a good sign.
Lots of interesting points. Thank you for that. The bombings in Paris have focused attention again on Muslims with headlines such as how Saudi Wahhabism is the fountainhead of Islamic terrorism. These type of headlines hide how the powers of the West in different parts of the world have divided and ruled people along a variety of fault lines. In the Muslim world, meanwhile, the West has found sectarianism to be the best tool. It is the French establishment that requires scrutiny long before any Muslim community is to be scrutinized. We've run out of time for today. Thank you, Professor Tariq Ramadan, for joining us, and thank you all at home for watching. Goodbye.